Welcome to Andy Nicole's podcast. Please like, share and subscribe.
Welcome to Andy Nicole's podcast. Press like and subscribe.
Welcome to Andy Decodes. Sit back and enjoy. As we dive deeper down into the rabbit hole and into the unknown. Hello.
Welcome to Staticom Sunday.
Nice one.
Yay! Yeah.
Good name. Good name.
Yeah. Today, we are joined by Rania Cavetti, Lourdes Gonzalez, Tony Rathman, and Cherie Rathman, and they are the Staticom project. They are revolutionizing the world of ITC and how we connect with the afterlife.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
For having us.
Thanks.
You are more than welcome.
Thank you. But before you guys start, I wanted to say your intro is awesome. And the first guy really familiar.
Steve Mera.
Is that Steve Mera?
Yes.
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 Yeah, he great guy. He has a connection to another friend of ours, Don Phillips. And
All right.
two amazing people.
Yes.
Yeah, I've met Steve like 3-4 times now, and he's just conversations you have with him and just
Mind blowing, yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you.
Cool.
I just see how short Tommy is. Tommy's so much shorter than everybody's little cartoon.
Oh yeah.
Everybody's here and Tommy's like here.
I have to squash him and stretch, so yeah, it's the only way I could do it at the moment. So I'm just waiting. So the person that makes the characters, the cartoon, I'm just waiting for him to do the full body versions. So once you do that, I can do more of the 2D animation then.
That's awesome.
We'd like to get those done too, but I'd like if you could have them do mine to make me taller than Tony. Because
It's going to be like this.
yeah. In real life, it almost happened once. We were at a location. I stood on a stair higher, so it looked like I was about the same height as him. And then he stepped up and leaned on me. He was like, "All right,
All right. Well, how tall are you, Tony?
About 6'1".
Oh, I thought you were going to say like 7 foot or something.
No, not that tall. Not that tall.
I used to be 6'1". I did, but I jumped out of plane, so my legs are up here."
I'm 5'11".
I
don't think so.
Beauty. Nobody can tell when you're sitting down.
No.
Everybody looks the same
I'm
height.
9 foot, honestly. I really am.
You're one of those giants from the
Not
Smithsonian.
not even 6 foot, and that's all I'm telling you.
It's good that we start the show out with a lot of dishonesty. Just get that out of the way.
Yeah.
We won't lie about, the paranormal and stuff like that, but we will lie about our heights.
Height and age.
Yep.
That's right.
Yes.
Not a
Don't
problem.
talk about age.
No.
No age.
Oh, I'll talk about mine all day. I'm 25.
You're older than me then.
Wow.
Reverse that 25. That's us.
Give or take, and add a couple more.
Oh, a couple
Yeah.
more.
Yeah,
Everybody-
podcasting was all black and white when we started.
Everybody has been
Yeah.
kind of a buzz about Staticom since Ron and Lourdes were here before. They kind of blew everybody's mind. I think Andy sat there speechless for the first time. Like,
Yeah, I was like
in.
trying to take it in and trying to work out what it all meant, because I'd never heard of anything. I understand like the white noise and the EVP and that, but the way you guys bring it all together, it was trying to get my head around that. That was the difficult part.
Well, I want to say thank you for having us back, not just on the strength and respect shown from that, but also because we like to, with everything we do, represent with genuine honesty and authenticity what it is we have and how we have it. And it wouldn't be authentically represented without Tony and Cherie sitting here with us, because it is where it is in complete large part to all four of us. So this was a nice opportunity for us to not only come back, but then to introduce, as we say with couples, although there are better half, and hopefully we're their better half. But that's
absolutely,
that's a big thing for us. We were grateful to be coming back with them.
No, I'm just glad you all agreed to come back on. I really am. And
of course, we had a great time the last time.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
So can you remind me and tell everybody else like how you guys kind of came together to work on Staticom?
Yeah, a temp agency called us up and go, do you like electronics? We went, I don't know. How tall are you? 7 foot. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the story is that, Cherie and I, along with Chris and Audra, started a podcast program called Entity Voices Paranormal Evidence. And we had Ron and Lourdes on as guests, and they talked about their evidence and went through it. And the show went really well. And then Chris and Audra ended up moving from the Phoenix area over to North Carolina. So we asked Ron and Lourdes if they could fill in as co-hosts. And the shows went great. And Chris and Audra called us up after and said, hey, those were some pretty good shows. What do you think about adding them to the co-hosts permanently? And I said, I think that's a great idea. So we did. And so that started our connection with them, and that grew over the years. And then they invited us out to the New Jersey area for what we called the 4-mansion tour, which was 4 haunted mansions in 4 days, which was absolutely fantastic, but exhausting.
Yes.
But they were experimenting with direct radio voice at that time. So we had 4 long nights of being able to experience it, see what he was capturing. And Cherie and I built spirit boxes for about 12 years. And I think we have 13 of them that are still sitting here today. And they got progressively better. But when I heard that Ron was getting full sentences, and I said, hey, what's this method? How is this working? He was kind enough to explain it to us. And then we joined them to upgrade DRV from what they had currently had it at to where it is today at Staticom.
Yeah,
Cool.
that is how it happened. And that was the goal, right? The goal was to collaboratively advance it. But you never know when you get started how or when but I'll tell you now, sitting here with what we're started to call 2.0, it is absolutely advanced since they got involved with us with DRV. And then just to recap from before, we changed it to Staticom because we removed as the source of the white noise a radio in our attempt to not only understand how we thought it worked, but to vet the authenticity of the process by removing the 2 things that cynical people will sling at ITC to try to discredit it, one of which is radio bleed through. So now that is off the table.
Gone. Yep.
So when do you guys know when it needs upgrading? Is it just new tech coming out, or
it's a never-ending process? We wanted to be able to establish a connection. Ron and Lourdes had that immediately when they were doing DRV. So then you're always looking, okay, what doesn't sound right? What do we think maybe could be improved? And of course, clarity and response time are always at the top of that list. The more, like when Ron was talking about giving it true authenticity, if people are arguing about what they heard, then you get into the whole warble artifacts discussion, you get into pareidolia. So those factors are always on the list of trying to improve. And that's what we worked on when we went from Staticom to Staticom 2.0, is that clarity. So when somebody hears it, there's not even a second thought, what did I hear or what words were those? It was, oh my gosh, did you hear this? And then other people go, exactly what I heard. So those, I think, are always on the table for improvement.
Yeah, I want to point out that at the time, the 2.0, Tony and I were both testing various different things to try to add to what we were doing or change what we were doing with components we already had. I had made a little bit of an advancement where I thought it got a little bit better. He made the breakthrough for the 2.0. And a lot of times when you lose in a game, right, that's when you reflect and go, what could I have done better? What needs to improve? When you win, you don't do that so much. You kind of sit back and relish and go, I did it. We were having success, and that's the innovative spirit that is Tony Rathman that we love, because he wasn't sitting in a position of going, man, this is not good. How do we make it good? It was already good.
Right.
But an innovator, no. It's how do we continue to make it good even when we're succeeding?
To make it better.
Can we make it better? And so that was a huge thing. And plus also, and then we probably mentioned it in their absence last time we were here, the 13 ghost boxes in 12 years that they built were amazing and never sold, because he was always, and they were always in it for the research, not to go to market. And there's nothing wrong with selling boxes. I know it's a great industry, but that was not his purpose. And then, so when they wanted to join forces with us, that was a huge selling point to me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, because you have that other aspect of it, the ghost box aspect coming into what you guys were doing.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the things I feel that they bring to this dance that we probably did not have, as a perspective. I mean, we know how to use them. We know how they work. We're knowledgeable in them. He built them.
Right.
He built them. He knows the inner workings. He knows the methodology. So when somebody like him, who not only had them, but made them, and good ones,
really good
says to you, I haven't turned them on in 2 years, we go,
Yeah, we have not touched, not used, not pulled our old ones off the shelves in over 2 years, because DRV, now Staticom 2.0, the difference between the authenticity of the voices, the fact that they're coming from a closed circuit of white noise to filtration to the speaker, can't touch radio waves, satellite waves, walkie-talkie wave, nothing. It doesn't have the ability to pull any of that in. And there's no audio data whatsoever in white noise, not syllables, not consonants, not words, let alone full sentences. So
yeah, our docuseries, Knowingly Talking to the Unknown, which is on Paraflix, it's a 3-part series. Tony gives it a longer, much more granular approach to explaining what he just said now, which is really, I mean, if you want to get a full understanding of what he just mentioned with no data, it's in that, and he explains it so well and in precise detail. So you really understand that there's nothing there to be producing vocals. We should not have anything whatsoever. And then through us doing this, we mentioned last time, in a zinc mine where there's no radio signal, cell signal, nothing, and we got voices with a radio as a white noise source.
Yeah.
And then Tony, with an extremely ballsy move of doing a sleep machine with chip quarter pre-recorded white noise and getting voices in front of a live audience, we realized the RF carrier signal that was always a main ingredient for ITC was not a necessity for us.
right.
So there's no radio, there's no data. We take everything up the table, and then Tony mentioned the fact that there's no data, and that sometimes the other thing that we get, the only thing that's left on the table for the cynic, is the warbles and artifacts. That because of there's randomness, white noise is random, that we're turning patterns and randomness, which we can always do. And again, we all four speak to this. If the fact that you're saying we can discern patterns and randomness is an appeal to our intellect. That's how we communicate, by seeing the organization of allophones, phonemes into words and phrases and sentences that we recognize. We don't mistake the dog or the cat meow or bark as, oh, hold on, they want the keys to the car, right? And then the fact that white noise is not fundamentally random. We believe that what we're getting is deterministic because it follows the patterns, the cadences, the depth, the tonal depth of consonants, vowels, diphthongs of speech. It just can't be measured. There's electromagnetic forces at play, charged ion particles from the sun, quantum fields. There could be a variety of things influencing it, but we think the fact that it resembles speech is deterministic and intentional. So it's not random. What it is, it's computationally irreducible.
And that's what's fascinating about direct radio voice and Staticom, because if you're an EV person like I was, the fascinating part of it is getting that voice that comes out of nowhere. So then you think about the Staticom and white noise and no data, and there are voices that seem to come out of nowhere. Yeah. So then putting the two together, with the EVP and the modern technology is just fascinating, and that's why I'm in love.
And to reintroduce or recap for people watching, she's a court reporter by trade, so she is a linguistic listening machine. She hears everything, and she recognizes people talking over each other, speeds, dialects, cadences, slang. So when she hears words in this, is an audio engineer telling me that warbles and artifacts of sound is speaking to an area of expertise that belongs to the lady in the hat.
And the thing is that now we're not in the courtroom, so now everything is recorded. So I listen and I do it. So it's really very similar to what we do now, even though we get a lot of voices in real time, and we hear it in real time, but we hear a lot in review. And exactly what I do for the living is what I do for the dead.
I love that.
So sorry, I was just going to say. So when you're listening with the Staticom, do you still write stuff down, or do you just take mental note of what's being said with the recordings?
I'm a mental notes person, but my mental notes are like an Etch-a-Sketch. Like if I shake my head too much, they're gone.
It's gone. Yeah.
we all believe it's always recorded.
Yes.
Both video and audio, so we can see what pops up on the screen. We can, meaning as far as the instrumentation that we're seeing, the recording of the vocals also there as well. So a lot of times there will be things in the actual live that you just miss. It's just the human brain is only capable of processing so much information at a time. And so we'll go back and listen and be like, oh my gosh, how did we miss that? But one of the coolest things that occurred is that we had audio engineers review the vocals that we get, and they clearly stated that it matches human speech. There is emotion involved. There is the speech of accents that show through and emotion thrown into the sentence, and that cannot occur from randomness.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say, when Ron and Lourdes was on last time, you was playing some of the clips, and I could, obviously, because I'm from the UK, I could pick up the American accent from different parts of the US, and I've never ever heard that before in any type of EVP. It's more like the robotic, like your underwater type sound.
Yeah,
but that was it. It didn't get any better than that. But then when you get the emotion and the accent, it's just wow.
I'm laughing because since the last time we were here, 2.0 happened, compliments of Team Rathman, between the last time we were here and now. And one of the things I've recorded since then and now is a female vocal that sounds like she has an English, meaning from UK accent.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we've even had people, when we do the TDSI or the Digital Seance initiatives, Ron and Lourdes, obviously East Coast, Cherie and I, West Coast. But we've literally had members of the audience come up and ask in a completely different language, Italian, Spanish, Native American. And guess what occurs? The machine will actually switch languages and answer them in their own language, which then don't even understand the answer that they got. but they'll be like, oh my gosh, they told me, they answered it, they said this, and we're just like, wow.
So we have the audience like translated for us, so
we can understand what they gave them, but that does happen as well.
Yeah.
But that also.
Sorry, you posted recently, Tony, that they were talking in Turkish, correct?
Yeah, that was a clip we played relatively recently that was off of 2.0, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. And I said, that doesn't sound like English. What language are you speaking? Luckily, Cherie caught it and she goes, Turkish. And when we played it back, of course, clearly you can hear it. But I said, are you speaking Turkish? And he's like, yeah. But then one of our friends who knows the language said, I don't think that's yes. I think it's evet or something like that, which is Turkish for yes.
Yeah.
And then I said, I don't speak any language but English. Can you speak to me in English? And they said, yes, we are.
We were like thinking maybe Staticom is not really
working right. Did I screw something up?
It was like, there's no English words.
But they weren't speaking English.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that was Todd and Carmela who were
watching.
It was Todd and
recognized it was Turkish. Yep.
Yeah.
But that also, I was going to say, that also proves the authenticity of it. That if it's speaking a language that you guys don't understand, you've no way of knowing what's being said, unless there's a translator there to prove it.
Yeah. Why would you?
For me, that's like right.
Why would you pareidolia yourself into a language you don't understand?
Yeah, right.
Well, exactly. And, pareidolia gets exemplified when it gets attached to paranormal. Pareidolia on a normal day-to-day basis doesn't really happen. And Ron uses this example all the time. You walk into work and they say you're fired and you're like, oh, I'm getting a raise. It's not that common of an occurrence. Does it happen? Yes, it does. But it gets exemplified when we're talking about paranormal and, oh, you're not hearing it right. But again, the fact that they were speaking in a language that we don't know, we can't understand, but the fact that we asked them to switch and they did, but that shows also that they're not always just talking to us. They're literally speaking amongst each other.
Yeah.
But not only that, what nice things about the Staticom is that you don't have to guess about what they are saying. Even the Google Translator, they will pick up the words.
Right.
So you don't have to, what did they say? Is this, that? But it's very clear.
We've had the text or speech to text show stuff that we had missed. And you're like, oh my God, now I hear it clear as a bell. But the fact that speech to text can translate it, that's a real good sign when you're talking about ITC.
Yeah, it's interesting when I've watched the Staticom live sessions, how the closed captioning will pick up the same words that people in the chat are hearing.
Right.
And that kind of adds a level of validity. Like even the computer knows what it's saying. It's that clear.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because that was the question that's come up is from Og. Are the voices you hear clear and audible?
Yeah, I mean, it's as clear, I would say, as clear and audible as anything we've ever heard in ITC at this point. And we think that the clarity and the audibility probably plateaued for 25 years without really changing.
Yeah.
This could be the game changer we're hoping for.
Right. I just want to say hi to Uncle Giuseppe. He's on.
Uncle Giuseppe.
Hi, Uncle Giuseppe.
Carol Garcia also.
Hi, guys.
So what was it like?
That it's so clear you can't mistake it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what was it like when you got your first what's the word I'm looking for? Like interactive EVP. Like
She's a good question.
In general, or you mean through Staticom?
Through Staticom, like with the accent and the interaction with yourselves, just everything about it, the whole deal.
I think for us, it was when we were doing direct radio voice, no? Like the one that answered the color of the couch.
Yeah, we asked for color of the couch. We asked to repeat a number.
Yeah, but what stands out for you? Because that's kind of a hard question.
I like some of the ones like when I was testing and you came down from being asleep, and then she walks in the room and the voice goes, "Hi, Lourdes," or the same thing from
There was
Massachusetts.
no question, nothing. I came down and they if they just saw, hi Lourdes. I'm like,
Yeah, a lot of the direct back and forth of conversation part. I know Tony and Cherie will speak to their own, but one of my favorite instances of that happening was with Tony, because he calls me up and he goes, all right, this has never happened to me before. I went, what? He goes, they're asking me questions. And I was like, that's awesome.
Oh my God.
What questions did you ask?
Well, for us, Ron and Lourdes showed us how to use direct radio voice. And this was still direct radio voice at that time. Radio was still being used to produce white noise. But this method isn't easy. So, I mean, people who are used to spirit boxes flipping the thing on and then just running with it, it's not like that. So it took Cherie and I a while to get it tuned in to where it was working for us. But the first thing that I noticed was I was asking questions and I could literally hear them say, he can hear us. Mm-hmm. And I said, yeah, I can hear you. And I mean, even the entity, spirits, consciousness, whatever you want to call it, that we were connecting with, were shocked that I could hear them and that I could hear them clearly. Mm-hmm. And then the next one that stands out to us, which is what Ron said, was, I mean, we built spirit boxes for 12 years. And when I would take those things out, I was going, are there any spirits here? Do you want to communicate? Question after question after question to try and elicit a response. I turned this thing on and they were talking to me. They were asking me questions. I was answering. That was mind-blowing. And my answers were then intelligently interpreted and another response would come back.
Wow.
And also, there's one thing when Tony's doing session by himself, I'm downstairs and he will ask a question. Hey, spirits, can you please tell me what's my wife's name? And they will say my name. So which is the interaction is there.
Yeah.
And I guess every equipment, spirit box or Staticom, I guess it's not there. The spirit will use. I think it's not manipulating the system or the equipment, but it's the connection with,
the operator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great point. I mean, even Marcello Bacci, when they tried to scientifically test it, they removed vacuum tubes from the radio he was using. He still got voices. The only thing they could remove to make the voices stop was him. Mm-hmm. It removed Marcello Bacci, the voices stopped. But they even unplugged it for like a minute or two, right?
Yeah,
Ron?
I think there's. I forget what it's called. When you have the residual electricity that's still running through it, was able to facilitate it enough. You know what's another really cool story? And I'll start it, but I like Tony to finish it because he tells it so well. When they first started doing direct radio voice, he got some message with saying something to do with Bacci, and his communication wasn't great yet. I get a female voice coming through, and it's asking me. She's asking me. She goes, "Tony's your friend," and I went, "Tony's my friend," and then she goes, "Yes," all in real time. And then I'm thinking, why would she make that statement? I mean, yes, he is, and while I'm thinking about it, she goes, "I'm asking."
Yeah.
And we're like, "Whoa,
wow!"
And then so Tony, you could take it from here, but like kind of set the stage for. We didn't realize what was happening until.
Right. We didn't know that they were communicating back and forth, which we know today. They do it all the time today. I mean, Ron's been told how many guests we have at our TDSI when we hadn't even spoken. And he goes, "Did you have X amount of people there that night?" I'm like, "You're spot on." How, so that information flows back and forth across the country. But to Ron's statement, oh my God, I lost my train of thought.
Tony's your friend.
Tony's your friend.
Oh, yeah. So the next day, I turned Staticom on and my communication just exploded. I was getting voice after voice after voice after voice. And now that we pieced it together, because Ron and Lourdes had been doing DRV longer than Cherie and I, even though we had been using spirit boxes for 12 years, 13 years, it was almost as if they had asked Ron, is he a friend of yours? Do you know him? And it was almost as if Ron said, yeah, he's my friend. Permission was given. And then ever since, I mean, we can't turn the thing on without voices just coming flying at us.
Quick question then, with you saying that, do you think it's because of you guys using the equipment that you're getting all this interaction, or is it because you've got a unique way of them to contact you, not just you contacting them, or a combination of the two?
I would say it's a combination of
Yeah, I
the
would say combination.
Yeah.
Based on Tony's explanation of Marcello Bacci, the operator and the intent, and if we're communicating with consciousness, which is what we believe to be the case, then your subjective reality, and it's something that's outside of you impinging upon your dashboard of perception, has to involve you. You can't. To have an experience requires an experiencer, even if it's not a person. An experience requires an experiencer. And so in an attempt to have communication, which is an experience between more than one entity, otherwise that would be talking to oneself, which would not really be communication. It requires an experiencer. So I think both. I think the operator, and I think this methodology, because the stochastic and inverse stochastic resonance of the white noise as a core fundamental substrate for the communication to go back and forth, I think that's definitely the combination.
Because the process is weird. The process always seems to be the same, no matter what. Like when we started, when we read the books and how things progressed, it was to the T, like the same. We got EVP voices, direct voices, and then the direct radio voice. When Tony and Cherie started doing it, when we first started with the direct radio voice, they were shocked. They were like, they can hear us. And then we started communicating. When they started, same thing. It's like if they were shocked, like, wait a minute, another one? Wait, what? And they can hear us? And then they went in, and that happened. That seemed to be like they were asking permission, but it always seems to be like the same process in progression. And part of it is to put in the work. Because if you only turn on Staticom when you're doing an investigation and you don't really do like calling up a friend, you don't build the relationship. So it may not work as well. But we, all four of us, put in the time to call them up and have conversations and build a relationship.
We have an early
connection.
An older clip when we were just using the radio with the white noise. And that was it. No software. And the voices are going, hear me, hear me.
Oh, yeah.
Can you hear me? Hear me. Can you hear me? And that was similarly, and I do think also speaking to the operator's role in this, that is absolutely why Tony and Cherie were able to get good communication early on, because they had 12 years in the bank of communicating through the boxes. And the methodology does not speak to the operator, but their intent and the type of people they are does. And that didn't change. The method changed, and the method was more amenable to direct communication. So I think that's why they saw success quickly when they got on board with doing this stuff, and will continue to.
Thank you. And yeah, we agree with that as well. Just for an understanding for the audience about maybe in a couple lower layman terms, Ron loves to throw out big words and he's very good at it. But the way Staticom works is we use broadband white noise, and people ask us all the time, okay, what hertz, what frequency are spirits speaking at? They are all over the boards. We've got systems in place that'll tell us what hertz each voice comes in at. There is no one frequency. They literally jump. That's why broadband white noise works so well, because it's every frequency the human ear can hear, from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. Now that creates a background layer of sound. When they speak, whatever hertz they speak at goes over some of those hertz within the broadband white noise, and it amplifies their voice above the level where the broadband white noise is running, because the rest of it isn't amplified, only their voice on top of the same frequencies. So what Staticom does then is it cuts out the broadband hissing white noise and only pulls that elevated voice. That is why when you hear the responses, there's no static, there's no nothing. but that voice that was amplified above the bass line, and then we can pull it, isolate it, and hear it.
Yeah.
That's incredible. It's just the whole technology, the whole thing.
It's mind-blowing.
You do is awesome. Like people were saying that you guys are so humble and genuine, and the vibrations make a big difference in the chat. And I think it's true because, you know, when one of you aren't there, Staticom is saying your names. Like Lourdes, when you weren't there at the columns, like they were asking for you.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
Energy is important. That's why we try to work. That's why we work with you guys. That's why we work with Tony and Cherie and Chris and Audra. The energy has to be a good one. It has to be a happy one. It has to be no animosity or all that craziness. Because you may get communication, but not for us, not the kind of communication. We don't want to look for the negative stuff. We just want, the cool ones, the clean ones. They call the clean ones.
And, doing TDSI sessions with a live audience, and Ron and Lourdes, we've heard them say this many, many times, and we've experienced it as well. But if there's no hard end date or end time to the Digital Seance Initiative, the people that stay the longest are usually the people with the most interest, the higher energy level, the concentration on hearing everything that comes through. And as that group dissipates throughout the evening, we've both noticed that the response rates, the clarity, the intensified communication grows as that audience cuts down as the night goes on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like with the hardcore folk. I'm sorry, Nicole, go ahead.
If you think about like living people too, that's kind of the same way that it works. As the party kind of dwindles down, you have more meaningful conversations when there's less of a crowd.
Yeah. He was speaking to the living people, and so was she. Is that as the night goes on, the people who hang in the longest for the event are the ones that are usually most genuinely driven by seizing the opportunity to do this and to communicate.
Exactly.
And that intent seems to make a difference in what we're saying. And to Tony's awesome explanation of the white noise and how the broadband works, that to just kind of connect the dots, that's stochastic resonance. Wherever these voices are, if one of them matches one frequency in that white noise broadband, that's where the amplification comes from. Because it's two things vibrating at the same rate. That's where the elevation in sound comes. Similarly, if you ever push a child like on a swing, like at a park, if you match the speed they're moving, you build momentum of vibration. That's the amplification process. So
or like having a bee buzzing a foot from your head versus having the whole hive buzz a foot from your head. That's same sound, but that gets elevated.
Yeah. Another question for you. Have you ever switched it on without just putting it on for whatever reason, not communicating yourselves, but heard conversations between voices on there?
Yeah,
all the time.
I'm so glad you said that. I really am.
It's like a virtual eavesdropping.
Yeah.
I mean, you can literally sit there and listen to what they're saying back and forth, as long as it's English for us, or Japanese, or Tagalog for Cherie. But as long as it's a language you understand, you don't have to say anything. But what we did notice is even if we don't say anything, they know we're listening.
They know you.
How do they know that? Well, it's the same reason why anyone who's done EVP work can know that the answer can show up on the recorder before you even finish speaking it, which tells us that they're not receiving what we're trying to communicate through vocal sound waves. It's not our speech. It's mental energy they're picking up on.
I'm so glad you said that. I really am. I've got all goosebumps, head to toe and everything.
Yeah,
amazing. It really is.
We had an instance when we turned on Staticom a couple months ago. My son's cat passed away. And 3 days or so before he passed away, she had him on her lap and she was comforting him. And we turned it on, not even 20 seconds. The cat's name was Punkin, Punkin. And the voice goes, Punkin, how is he?
Yeah.
We hadn't said anything. We just turned it on.
I was like, we both looked at each other repeatedly. We were like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got we've got a couple of quotes. I've got a couple of questions, but I'll do the quotey type stuff first. So this is one from, I think, is it Courtney? Trinity Paranormal Investigation of
sure.
Long Island.
She's awesome.
So I think they told you how to communicate better with them. With DRV, they did say rearrange. That's exactly what you guys did, giving birth to Staticom and now Staticom 2.0, in my opinion.
That shows how much behind us she has always been, because
Right.
I'll tell you where that rearrange comes from that she's referring to. Remember the clip I told you? We were talking about the instance when the voice said, "Tony's your friend," and I went, "Yes," and she goes, "I'm asking." That's the same clip. That's the same time frame.
Ah.
Yeah.
And we had thought the same thing. We were already doing some rearranging already at that time. But yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, that's very possible, Courtney, and that's an excellent catch on your part.
Right?
Do you think on some level they knew that you guys were going to come together and work together to kind of rearrange and revamp everything?
I think
we were already working together at that time, so they did know that.
We were already working together, yeah.
Right.
I guess, you know what, maybe they did know that Tony and Cherie were going to come into this to the Staticom family. I mean, I don't know. Who knows?
And make it the Staticom
yeah,
family.
well, yeah, make it the Staticom family. You're right.
Yeah.
How much do you think they know on the other side, like have foresight of what's going to happen?
A lot more than they are allowed to tell us. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
We know when we hit a wall that they will not break. And, you know, personal opinion, but we call them universal laws. And if you piece together the puzzle pieces of information that they do give you, and then you know when you hit the wall where they say, "I can't answer, I'm talking, this is over." We've heard them say, "We'll get in trouble."
Yeah.
It just stops. Things like winning Powerball numbers.
Yeah.
Trust me, we've tried.
And sometimes they just go dead. They go dead silent, like
They
dead
go
silent.
dead silent. Yeah.
Like, the voices come and then you start asking those questions and it's like silent.
Correct. So do they know that stuff? I don't know. If they do, they're not saying it. And, you know, our sort of outlook believes that this particular 3D human bodied experience was made to learn, grow the soul or consciousness or whatever you want to call it. But too much information would be a huge distraction to that experience. If they told you, yeah, you're going to live again, or, you know, you don't die, or that reduces your focus on what you're doing, what you're here for, and would absolutely destroy the educational process. So we believe that they know all sorts of things, and that may come from that collective consciousness Ron was speaking of, that the individual soul or consciousness, which is part of that, returns to after human physical body death. But to have knowledge above that, I mean, let's think about if you could literally see and hear spirits walking around communicating 24 hours a day, you wouldn't be able to concentrate on anything. And you'd know, I'm going to survive this. What's the point?
Yeah.
So we believe the actual, people always ask, well, what do you think the veil is between the living and the afterlife? We believe that veil is literally the human body. Our five senses are all we have to understand what's happening. And those senses are limited. Your sight is limited to visible light. Your hearing is limited to a certain spectrum. The human body limits you from everything else. And by design, we believe.
Right, because if you experience everything, you would die. You would turn into entropic soup. You can't experience everything.
Yeah. No, that was so
all in one shot.
That was so well put. But I think that's one of the reasons why we also, as a collective, four of us, look to put a philosophy of mind behind what we're doing, because that's where the meaning is. That's where the meaning is. You know, physics will tell us what behaviors nature has, what it might do. It's predicting models of behavior, or maybe what it won't do, but it doesn't tell you what reality is. Right. And since parting with religion, science has lost an ability to have meaning. And if you didn't have this growth process of the soul that Tony spoke to, if all you thought was when you're done, you die and you cease to exist, and there's nothing to work towards, or there's nothing to grow towards, there's no value and meaning in life anymore. You completely valued the whole process to do that. And I think that's part of the problem. So we look at this from the analytic idealism and philosophy of mind perspective for that reason. Also, the fact of what they would know or not, I think, deals with time is really a man-made construct. You can't point to the future right now and show it to me. There it is right there. You see it? You can't do it. You can't point. Oh, look, there it is. There's the past. Because anytime you refer to those, either reflecting on what was or on predicting or expectations of what will be, it's always in the now.
Yeah.
So I think therein also are where some of the limitations are. But I love that Tony explained it that way with the growth of the soul thing, because the meaning is what's missing. And I think if our culture, and especially the paranormal, is so consumed with measurements and numbers and stats, and is that we fail to read the letter for the sake of measuring the envelope.
Right.
You know
Well, the other thing is right, exactly. And the other thing is that what is classified as paranormal, we view as just plain normal. We just are showing that it happens every day, over and over. There's nothing para about it. It just plain happens and is a normal function within true reality.
Right. Yeah. We believe it's nature doing its thing. That's what it is.
Yeah. And that's important too, because we lose the argument with the cynics who think all this paranormal stuff is BS, because we try to paradoxically at the same time defy modern science and say this stuff is out there and not measurable by you, and at the same time adhere to it by trying to give an explanation that applies that same modern measurable science to it. That's why we lose. You can't. What we're saying now is that reality allows for this. This is natural, and it's just nature doing what it does, and it doesn't need now some grandiose explanation. It instead maybe take a step back and rethink what it is we believe reality to be. Because to say something is or isn't real, like ghosts, you have to have an idea what reality is to use reality as a measuring stick for an experience.
Right. And materialistic science can't even measure what variables we don't fully understand, because they can't capture it, they can't measure it, they can't reproduce it. So, I mean, it's like trying to get a better tax return by going to your plumber and saying, help me out. The two don't coincide, never will. And you can't, like Ron said, try to explain what we call the paranormal by using a method that cannot measure it, describe it. It's never going to happen.
Yeah. Thank you. It's just so, I am literally lost for words, because it's amazing. It really, really is. And just you describing and explaining the things that you can do with it, there's just nothing else like it.
It's literally as close as we are right now to a telephone to the other side, where you can talk back and forth in real time, no playback, no evidence review. It's just a conversation.
Yeah, it allows us to modulate an experience into our perception, our reality, that we otherwise would not, through Tony's explanation of limited sensory input. We can only measure what our senses give us on our dashboard of perception. And if the dials doesn't have a sensor or a receiver to measure a certain thing, we don't receive it. We don't know. Right? So these things that are voices at frequencies we can't hear, things that exist in bands of light that we can't see. So we have equipment that helps us. The same way radio is going past your head now. You don't hear it. You get a device, a radio, you turn it on, it modulates the experience. Boom, now sensory input picks it up. The equipment we use in the paranormal does not give us extra sensory perception. It does not give us a heightened sense of what we can already perceive. It modulates the experience into where we can.
Right. Perfectly said.
Yeah. It is just mind-blowing. That's all I've got. Got a couple of questions for you. This one's again from Og. She's asking, have you ever communicated with someone you knew?
we both have.
All of you.
All of us.
I'll answer quickly, then I'll let Tony explain, because Tony had the one when he was testing. It was still 1.0.
His grandfather.
Yes, which was really cool. But just Uncle Giuseppe mentioned in the chat earlier, I had 2 instances. One was within the last 3 or 4 days when it was my mother and grandmother, her mother, that came through together, both by name. We had another instance when we asked for my mother and a voice goes, "Hey, Florence, it's your son." Like they were calling her.
I had co-workers. For some reason, because I had 2 co-workers that passed, and they both came through.
And Tony, you had your grandfather, and didn't Cherie had her mom also?
Your mother, yeah.
My mom, who passed away a couple of years ago, and we tried to reach out through Staticom, and she mentioned my nickname. Which,
she called her by her nickname, which was Cell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And then I had asked to speak to my grandfather, and we heard he's here. And then I said something like, "Hello, Grandpa, it's your grandson, Tony." And then, I was pretty young when he passed away, but I do remember him, and I do remember conversations. But he replied, "Howdy, Tony." And I just thought that was kind of strange, because it's a sort of a dated statement. "Howdy, Tony," that. So what I did was I recorded it and I sent it to my mother. Didn't say a word. Recorded or replayed for her the entire conversation, and she called me like in 2 minutes. She goes, "Oh my God, that's my father. How did you do this?" So she identified everything. And I said, "Well, did he normally say howdy? Was that a term?" She goes, "All the time. That was him." So it was great exposure. But that's the other thing about Staticom, is that we don't know the boundaries yet.
No.
People ask us, "How do you know you're speaking to spirits?" Well, there's times they clearly tell us we're spirits. I mean, we've heard that over and over. I asked about speaking to extraterrestrials. They clearly told me, yes, you can. But then to multidimensional creatures, could Bigfoot be communicated? We don't know. We don't know the boundaries. But that's what's so fascinating about Staticom is we're at the tip of the iceberg of what may be able to be done. And that research is going to take probably a lifetime, but we're all more than willing to do it. So
yeah,
and the fascinating thing is that they always give us a clue, right? Because he says, "I'm an astronaut," and are they really an astronaut? But they always seem to give us clues to validate who it is, like the "Howdy, Tony," or like they always seem to give you that one extra clue that you're like, that's them. That is definitely them.
Yeah, no, right. Yep. And Nicole, our joint friend, now Tony Cherie, know him also, Richard Michelle, who's a spirit artist. We had a vocal that I sent him. We were doing a residential he brought us in on, and the voice said, "Richard, I love you, feel it." And he played it for his mother, and she goes, that's my mother. Like they recognize the voice. Mm-hmm. I have no way of knowing that. We had people from the Jersey Expo send us thing going, "This is my brother-in-law passed away in a motorcycle accident a year and a half ago. This is him saying his name in his voice." Now, I don't know his voice, but she sent me the recording,
and
the name was there. So there are certain instances where, like she said perfectly, you get a clue. This is something that's kind of proprietary as information goes.
Yeah.
And then the pushing the bounds thing, Tony could not be more correct. We don't know. And that's one of the reasons why we took up a big interest in analytic idealism as a philosophy, because again, the sciences that measure tell us what things behave doesn't speak to what something is. And we're trying to know as much about the nature of the reality we're in, not just to make this stuff normal, but to know what boundaries there are to push, or what boundaries we may expect or look at, overcoming or running up to. So it's part of a greater understanding of, because reality, everything happens within our reality. So we want to know, what does it say we're limited to? What do we know about it? Yeah. And then take the application of what we're doing. And then, which to this point, I couldn't agree more with Tony. We don't know what we're limited to yet with this.
Right. Perfectly good point. The other advantage to the Staticom is, unlike a lot of spirit boxes, there's no additional input of echo reverb.
Yeah.
We're not trying to make the voices that come through sound spiritual or sound. It's clean and clear. And whatever comes through, comes through. We have not affected it. We have not altered it. Now, can the machine or method itself maybe changed it a little bit? Yeah, probably possible, because you're taking a source, you're converting it through a method to allow it, like Ron said, for our sensory perception to interpret it. But like he was saying, people have recognized the voices of other people, which tells us we haven't modified it enough to make it unrecognizable.
Yeah. Have you tried contacting, say, ET?
Well, us personally, we haven't tried, but they have told us we are aliens. But I don't think we ever really focus on aliens.
And that's what she was speaking to before about the astronaut thing. I am not, for disclaimer, I am not an astronaut. But I've said that before, because when people say, like, they use a spirit box or something and then they get demon, it says demon, they go, oh, it's a demon. I went, look, just because I say astronaut doesn't mean that's what I am. I'm just saying the word.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's what she was referring to. So, but I know Tony asked, at least as recently as that one session on 2.0, if he could communicate with ET, and they said yes.
Yeah. We thought we had some extraterrestrial messages coming through still on regular Staticom, not 2.0.
Yeah.
But this voice was just, it was there constantly every time I turned it on, but we couldn't understand it. And probably for about 4 or 5 days straight, we're able to catch the name. So we'd ask for the name. The second I said, hey, so-and-so, are you there? Boom, response would come right through, but it wasn't audible. Yeah. Turns out, though, we don't think that was extraterrestrial, because he identified himself and gave us a bunch of other information. But the point, though, about Staticom, though, is there is a level of trust that and defenses that we have to use, because we're not 100% sure who we're speaking to.
Right.
You know, people always ask us, how do you know you're not talking to something on the dark side and they're lying to you? Well, we don't run into a lot of that. But the fact of the matter is we don't know. So that guard always has to be up. We don't know for sure whether we're speaking to spirit, extraterrestrial, multidimensional. But again, that pushes the limits and the boundaries of what Staticom is capable of. And we'll continue to push those limits to find out. But do we have all those answers? Do we know everything? Not even close.
No.
Yeah. And then if you think about just within our reality, you can be talking to somebody. Do you really know? You meet this person. Do you really know who that person is? They say that they're a certain type of person, but they may be. So it's the same thing, you know? Yeah. No, we don't know who we're talking to. We don't know if it's good or, but it's the same thing in real life.
Right. But at least in an instance, you can delineate that you're actually talking to a person. There's a really good academic paper out by Dr. Bernardo Kastrup that speaks to the UAP phenomena with regards to communication. And so one of the reasons why I've kind of pulled back from the idea of extraterrestrial contact is that if it's some entity from another world, another realm that doesn't exist here ever, then you would have syntax, cultural references. There'd be a variety of things that would not be translatable to language as we know it. Everywhere on our planet, there are commonalities to the language and the building blocks of it, cultural references that are identifiable or transferable. You don't have that. It's the same reason why you can't translate the roars of a bear into English like you could translate Chinese into English. Yeah. Because it's missing a lot of the correlates you would need to translate. So there would have to be, at least according to this paper, and that makes sense to me, there would have to be some kind of a manipulation within our own consciousness, within our own dissociative boundary that separates us, where something would have to be using maybe imagery or some kind of, visual metaphor, something to try to translate or convey an idea. But there would have to be some kind of a difference culturally and with references and stuff as far as communication. So I hesitate for that reason with the idea of extraterrestrials coming through, but I can't rule it out, because who knows, what's capable on the other side.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
So someone had said in the chat they wondered if it was a similar thing to how those with psychic abilities receive information, like on specific frequencies. I know Ron and Lourdes, you guys work with Rich Michelle a lot while he's doing mediumship. Tony, Cherie, do you guys ever do something with mediums as well?
Yeah, we have. When we're talking about what comes through Staticom, whether it, is accurate or not, when the times happen where maybe a medium said something, Staticom confirms it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can go look it up through research and find out that it's accurate. That is when you can place some credibility on what's coming through Staticom. And that's happened to both of us many times.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's like, oh my gosh, how did they know that? Ron and Lourdes have a clip where they're asking spirits, where'd you grow up? And they literally give a name that Ron and Lourdes wasn't even aware was a town in that state. They said Sinac. And the people heard it. They all repeated that they heard it. And that was absolutely correct and could be verified.
That's a great point.
Yep.
Mm.
We didn't even know it's Little Falls. It used to be called Signac. We didn't know.
Yeah, a subdivision of it was called Signac.
Yeah, and it came out.
We've also had a conversation where we literally had to look up words they were using because we didn't know what they meant. And then when we looked them up and went, oh my gosh, this is what they're saying. And people say, well, how do you know your own consciousness isn't affecting the device? How could my own consciousness put in a word that I didn't even know what it was?
Bingo.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
then, like Ron says, we wouldn't run into that problem all the time. If you're in the car listening to the radio, why doesn't at times our thoughts come through the radio? Why wouldn't it? It doesn't happen.
And when doing digital seance initiative in front of an entire group, how come it doesn't get flooded with every individual's thoughts shooting out contradictory information, overlapping each other? That doesn't occur.
I love my people. Because think about that as a theory goes for how this stuff works. That's one of the things that people posit is that this stuff, maybe it's us coming through our radios and our devices and stuff. And you have to think through as far as you can think through the extent of this running its course. And then you run into these kinds of problems where, is there any documentation of us coming through our own radios, driving to work, listening to tunes? There's 50 people in the room. What governs thoughts come in over whose? Why aren't they all mashed up? They make great points because you have to consider that. You can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. When you have a theorem for something, it either applies across the board as far as you're able to see an application for it, or it doesn't. Then you have to dial it back and go, this thing lacks explanatory power. Where else do we go to try to figure this out?
Right. Well said. And because every month, I'm sorry, go ahead, Lourdes.
No, I was going to say the only instance that ever happened as far as being in a car and a voice came through the car speaker was when we were at an event coming back and the podcast, we couldn't make the podcast. And Tony and Cherie, Chris and Roger were speaking and Tony was talking about white noise. And this is before we Staticom. It was still
DRV.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Tony and Cherie were involved yet. I can't remember. But he mentioned white noise. You were? Okay, so he mentioned white noise. And all of a sudden, Ron and I hear a voice that comes through. White noise. That was it. That was the only time. But I don't think that's not our thoughts. No. That's them giving us a clue about the white noise.
But you're absolutely right about the clue. But think about it. I mean, at the end of every weekend, the following morning, if my own thoughts were coming through my radio, on my entire drive to work, I hate Mondays. That never happens.
Never happens.
Yeah.
That's true. I remember Friedrich Jurgensen, who's one of the pioneers of direct radio voice, when asked a similar question about our thoughts coming through, he goes, I would be the most powerful person on the planet if I could, in a blink of an eye, have access to vernacular, to jargon, to specific proprietary information, senses of humor, technical terms, like different dialects, like all just like that, which is what comes through that you're saying is coming from me.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't hold up.
I don't even know what to say anymore. It's
That's
just,
what I love.
it's just
I love
amazing.
our
I've
team.
been asking Tony about this, even though we've been in the paranormal for a long time and this Staticom, I still have question after question. I'm like, my brain is like,
Well, but that's the great thing about this team here, is that it's literally a learning experience for all of us. And when somebody asks a question, well, how is this happening? It gets everyone else thinking. And to Ron's point, that whatever theory you have has to facilitate what's occurring, not the other way around. It can't hit roadblocks. When it matches and things flow appropriately, that's probably a much better explanation of what's occurring than hitting it up against variables where everything stops.
Yeah.
But Cherie's questions to me, Ron's questions to all of us, my questions, that's how we keep it moving forward. And so far, everything's falling in line, which, trust me, that's not an easy process when dealing with something as vague, where variables are unknown, where, Ron always uses this expression is that we look up and it's like a football coming towards us to catch and run with. We don't know who threw it. We don't know what direction it came from. We just grab it and run with it. That's Staticom today.
Yeah, and I love the team for that reason too, because we don't just look to explain and demonstrate Staticom. We look to explain and demonstrate all of the things we think that factor into reality and how we think this is even possible and what makes the most sense of it. And he's right. When you have brick walls that you hit theoretically and trying to explain something, you gotta take a step back. The theory must fit the facts, not the other way around.
Right.
And that's our approach when we do this. All of us.
That reminds me of one of my favorite things, other than the Staticom things that I've heard from your guys' talk, Lourdes, when you talk about the speed of light thing.
Oh.
How it was changed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the facts have to match what's happening, not the other. You can't change it to match.
Right, and that's horrible what they did. If people don't know, between 1923, I think it's because I haven't spoken about it in a while, but between 1923 and 1945, the speed of light changed. It dropped 20 kilometers per second. Oh. And nobody knows about it because what they did was they kind of fudged them, and this happened worldwide. They fudged the numbers to then come up with the value that they came up with, in whenever they came up with whatever they said the speed of light was, and they fudged it so it can match that number. And then what they did was, because they were asked what would happen if this happens again, and they were like, well, it's not going to happen again, because what they did was that they took the apparatus that they used to measure the speed of light, and they rigged it in a way that if it was to change, it'll automatically fudge the numbers itself to come with the value that they came up with for the speed of light.
Yeah, it'll automatically make an adjustment and recalibrate.
So we would never know if the speed of light ever changed again, because that's what they did, and that's horrible.
I find that so fascinating, because I think that's how science kind of explains all of the paranormal. It's like, well, it doesn't fit, so it's not right. We'll make sure
so they fix it. They fix whatever, they fudge. That's what they do. They fudge.
Yeah, because that's what it does, and that's the objective of physics, is to try to model what reality is and then predict what it's going to do. And they'll do that to try to debunk stuff. Somebody at some point is going to make something. They're going to think it's close to what we're doing with Staticom, and they're going to go, this is it. We've simulated the same thing and we've explained it away, but you can't. The simulation is not the same thing. Science fiction has made it so it's so plausible to people that you can upload consciousness into some computer, and the idea that AI is going to have intelligence. Dr. Kastrup says it is a great example. You can, on a computer, to a molecular level, simulate kidney function. Accurate to a molecular level, you on a computer can simulate kidney function, but the experience is not the same as a simulation, right? So to say that you can simulate kidney function does not mean that your computer is going to pee on your desk. The reality is not the same thing as the simulation.
Right.
The reality is
But great point, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want a computer peeing on my desk.
No.
No.
Should we go? Should we go for a break while I try and get my head around all this?
Sounds good.
Yeah. How long do you want? Minute or 3? You choose.
Let's do 3.
3? Right. See you then. Hello, and we are back.
Yay.
So I've been asked, do you have any place where we can view the results from the Staticom?
We actually have multiple places. Gonyak Paranormal has a Staticom section with clips. EntityVoices.com has a Staticom page with clips. We have a Staticom YouTube channel where you can literally go to YouTube, just type in Staticom. You'll see Ron, Lourdes, Tony, and Cherie Staticom. There are multiple clips up there. I don't know if we put up anything on there recently because a lot's been going on, but I know we do need to do an upgrade and advancement of a lot of clips that have occurred recently that probably aren't there yet. And Ron and Lourdes may have other areas as well that it can be put up or that clips that can be shown.
Yeah,
I think pretty much mentioned.
Yeah, I'm gonna put some more up on the Staticom YouTube page. I try to keep current on that, and then I have on GonyakParanormal.com on our site. On the Staticom page, there's a video player that's got clips from both Tony and Cherie's sessions and ours intermixed. So you can literally just click on the one on the bottom. It goes into the player, and you can watch a whole bunch of them there. it's pulling from a YouTube playlist, so that's going to be both on YouTube and on our site.
Right, okay. I was going to say, if you want, it's entirely up to you guys. You don't have to. If you want to send me some links, I can put mine on the website, and then click on it, and it'll take it straight to it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm more than happy.
Yeah, we appreciate
I'll
it.
just sit there all day listening and watching.
Well, we appreciate that too.
Honestly, it's the least it can do.
It draws you in, like when they're doing lives and stuff on Facebook. It'll be like 2 a.m, and it's like, how am I still watching? But it's so interesting.
That's why I can't watch it, because of the time difference. I wouldn't go to work. I would not be going to work.
This sucks you in.
Yeah.
Come on.
So, Jenny Colucci said that last night when we were at the investigation in Morris County. She says, "All right, you got to shut it off because I'm a member of Staticom Anonymous." She goes, "If it's still running, I can't leave."
Yeah.
That can be a problem, though. I mean, there's times I won't shut it off either, and Tree's like, "You gonna help clean?"
You gotta go to work, honey. It's Monday tomorrow.
Right?
Oh yeah.
Thanks for reminding.
To know when to like.
That happens. It
because
really
you
does.
can-
It pulls you in. For every answer that we think we might get, there's 1,000 more questions that come from it. And I've had conversations with people, and they always say to me, "Have you asked this? Have you asked that? Have you asked this?" Literally hundreds of thousands of questions. And I'll say, "No, we've never asked that," or something about history or past people, or what occurred to how are the pyramids built. There are so many questions. Would we get answers? I don't know. We haven't really hit that road yet, or those type of questions. Will it eventually happen? Yes, it will. But it's mind-blowing when you think about the unknowns to the human experience and what we question. Did Atlantis exist? Was it real? You could go on and on and on. And we've never tried questions like that yet. That one was just asked to me the other day. Was Atlantis real? Have I asked it yet? No, I haven't, because we're in the middle of moving and all sorts of other things. But the list goes on and on and on.
We've asked some more out there esoteric kinds of questions before too, just from consciousness study, and then the philosophy stuff. We've asked, is reality mental or physical? We've heard both answers, or the word both.
Yeah, I can't think of it. Yeah, but we've asked.
We try to ask.
We try anyway.
Sometimes to see if we can get something with a little bit more of an insight. And again, it's as good as face value, I guess I would say, right? Because when Tony mentioned before, we don't necessarily have caller ID to the dead or the consciousness.
Yeah, I was going to say,
there's a
problem. If we can invent that, though, that'd be great. We'll plug it in.
That's next. Have you ever tried? Oh, sorry. Go on, Nicole. No, all right. Just a quick one. Have you ever tried or thought about doing a remote view session at the same time as using Staticom?
We've actually done that many times. In fact, with Ron and Lourdes being in New Jersey, Cherie and I being in Phoenix, and Chris and Audra being in North Carolina.
Yep.
We've had so many examples where they've communicated information back and forth amongst 3 states in a matter of a second or two. The one example that comes to mind is that we were all online like we're on now. Ron was running Staticom that we could hear it over the live. Chris wrote a word on a piece of paper, never said it. Ron said, Chris wrote a word on a piece of paper. Tell us what that word is. In a matter of a second or two, the answer came through. The word was said through Staticom. Chris held the piece of paper up, 100% correct.
Wow.
Yep.
Right.
That's crazy how that happens.
So the whole time-space limitations thing, at least for whoever we're connecting with, does not seem to be a problem to be able to do something like that. And I think also that when we speak to the whole universal consciousness thing that we're dissociated from, it makes sense because if through billions of years of evolution, we can see with our eyes, right? We have a whole ocular system that allows us to have vision, even if it's limited in scope, right? To suggest that spirit can see our realm without eyes is hard to you can't empirically explain it. It's difficult to try to theorize how that would even happen. But if we're connected to a universal consciousness that we're all dissociated from but connected to, then all that needs to have happened is somebody who's connected to it would have needed to see it. So Chris seeing it makes it so that it's connected to universal phenomenal consciousness, and then it's out there for whoever's out there, maybe not in physical form like us, to be able to send back that information or to have access to it, because it's been contributed to the greater whole.
Which is different than us, it coming from us, like creating it from our own. It's different. It's more of through us.
Right. And this is a theoretical explanation behind that's okay. I was saying this is a theoretical explanation behind near-death experience, how someone's out of their body and supposedly without the use of eyes is able to report on things happening in the surgical room. It's because somebody, at least or more than one somebody, is contributing that information to universal phenomenal consciousness, so it's available to be accessed. So they're getting it through the dissociation, through impingement from being connected to a greater consciousness that we're a part of. We've asked what color is the couch. Again, we believe getting that information, they're grokking that from our sensory input into universal consciousness and then answer. That's our theory.
Yeah, and that's my point. They don't need to see through Chris's eyes. Chris is knowing Ron asked, what word do you write? Chris is thinking exactly what word he wrote. That is all they need to be able to pick up on what word is written on that paper.
That's right. I was going to say, do you think they could be using each of your eyes to see what's going on? But
that I would find a little more challenging to define.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't even as humans, and I'll use this as an example, but if you say, what's the main color in the background behind Ron, Lourdes, Cherie, and I, the main color is black, and we're all going to agree it's black. But can I say that Andy's black is the same as Nicole's black, is the same as my? No, I can't. Why? Because I can't see the color you're seeing. You just know that everyone said, oh, that color is black. Because could Nicole's be green? Could Andy's be red? Could mine be blue? Yeah, it could. We don't know.
I think all you need is one experiencer, one person to experience whatever it is, whatever information. And if you have that one person, it's out there. Yeah. And that's where they get it.
I think so too.
So if one person saw it just now or 100 years from now, it's there. So now they know that information.
I even think with the thing on the paper, by extension, like for Chris to have just thought what he wrote without actually using his eyes, but he knows what he wrote through self-reflection, right? To metacognize, to not only experience something, but to know he experienced it. That's where his thought comes from. So the sensory input is what fed the thought, which is what fed the contribution. So it is still coming from a contribution, but I think by extension, it would still is something seeing that he experienced it and he knew
something
he experienced
was experienced, right?
Being able to reflect on himself, experiencing it, and then contributing it.
Yeah, so I think like what Tony is saying, I don't think like they're seeing it with our eyes.
Like a periscope.
Yeah, right.
And that's what I'm saying, but the contribution, the visualization of it is coming from that.
Right.
Well, I completely agree. And same thing going back to asking a question via EVP and having the answer show up before you even finish the question.
Yep.
And we've asked, because we don't broadcast our voice, not through mics, not through anything. I'm speaking just as I'm speaking now, minus the fact that we have a mic in front of us to allow the broadcast to hear our voices. When we do Staticom, we do not. So my question was, how do you hear me speak? If they don't have physical ears, if they're not being able to perceive sound waves as vocals are perceived to humans, how are they hearing me? The response came back. Energy of the mind. That's the thing.
Yeah, I love that one. It's such a great one.
Yeah, that's a very
Yes,
clear
I love that
response.
one.
So that's a good one to
It's
look
one of my
up.
favorites.
When you go to the websites to look at some of the clips, that's a good one.
That's cool because that happens with like EVPs too. Sometimes people are just thinking things and the answer's coming through and they didn't even say the question.
Right.
With Staticom as well.
So you're not broadcasting out and you're having response time, which is for all intents and purposes, superluminal contact, which is faster than speed of light. Right. So how's that happening? If we're connected to universal consciousness, then it's already there. It doesn't have to traverse a distance as we think with wires and communication. It's already there.
Yeah. I just want to say quickly, I know I spoke, Ron and Lourdes know, and Nicole knows, but one of the lads in the chat, Nathaniel Gillis, the first time I interviewed him, asked him a question, and before he could answer it, an EVP came through saying, you know, but no one caught. We didn't catch it at the time, but there's somebody in the chat that caught it, and I managed to download, like, save it and get a clip of it, and it is, yeah, it's the only one I ever caught on a live feed. It's amazing, but it's just like you said, it's the timing of it.
Yeah,
timing and relevance.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the measuring stick for us for anomalous vocals being anomalous. Timing and relevance is just hard. It's hard to dismiss that, and then we're not hearing it correctly is the only other fallback for trying to explain it away. And how often can you lean on that?
Right, especially if other people agree that's what they heard.
Yeah,
that breaks that excuse down and apart. That it's.
There's with that one, there's a couple of variations of what was said, but it meant the same thing anyway. It was, I heard a couple of people said they thought they know or he knows, but it was something no.
Well, and Lourdes speaks to this all the time, and I'll let her do it. But the fact that if two people heard something differently, does that mean words weren't said? No. Could one of those, and like I said, I'll turn that over to Lourdes because she explains it very well.
Yeah. So is that your example is a good example. Their information came through, whatever it was, even though you all heard it differently. But just because you all heard it a little different doesn't mean that it's pareidolia. It doesn't mean that words weren't spoken. Words obviously were spoken. And then I guess it depends on the individual's input on what they hear, but that doesn't mean that words weren't spoken and that it's pareidolia, which people tend to gravitate to.
Yeah, a lot of ghost box studies and academic papers rely on that. They go, well, 8% of 100 people listening to the clip heard the same thing, and 70% heard various things, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't spoken. It just means there was a difference in the listening experience, which could have a variety of other influencing factors, but it does not mean it wasn't speech.
Right.
See, I wonder if they did the same experiment with actual living people speaking, if you'd get the same results. Only people heard the actual word.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I would bet they would. I had an uncle as a kid growing up who every time he heard the Bee Gees song More Than a Woman, he thought they were singing Bald Headed Woman.
Bald-headed woman. That's so funny.
And he would sing it with feeling. And it was wrong. But it doesn't mean it wasn't the Bee Gees.
Right. That is the advantage to Staticom today, is that we don't have that white noise background blaring in your face.
Yeah.
The vocals have unmatched clarity today. And that helps facilitate that people will agree what was said, even if a tiny word a tiny word or two is off in the end of the sentence or whatever. The meaning doesn't change,
right?
And that will help facilitate the fact that, not to mention the fact that it's white noise. There should be no vocals at all, let alone an answer with timing and relevance to the question asked. So,
yeah. And it has to have the same tones and cadence of what we think you hear, right? You get that with annotating or putting the captions on the video to go, oh, you're trying to make you hear something. I can't put up captions of what I think I heard in English and have people think that I'm speaking Swahili. I mean, it's not where that's what I'm hearing. It's got to be in the ballpark to have any power of suggestion.
people always say that. Why do you put what you heard up? That makes me think I'm hearing what you're saying. Not true. We've done tests where we put up something completely different, and people are like, I don't hear that at all. So human hearing's not that valuable that me putting up they're saying close the door, and it's something completely different that people go, oh yeah, I heard that. It's not that valuable.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Power of suggestion gets used way too liberally. It's not that powerful.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I agree that like it can influence it a little bit, but it's not going to make you hear something that wasn't there.
Correct.
And sometimes, for people who are newer and don't have the ear for it, like you guys listen to, Staticom all the time, so you have a much better ear than, the lay person maybe scrolling through on Facebook.
Yeah, and that is pattern recognition too that we developed from doing that, because it was like 70 or 80% of speech or communication rather between humans is visual. So we're not afforded the luxury of visibility when we're doing this.
Right, because you could always, well, not always, but if you're paying attention, you can tell when someone's about to speak. There's the body language. There's that first, the start. We don't have that because there's nobody to see, to see. Yeah. So that's what makes it difficult. But I got to tell you, there's some people that impress me first time investigating, and they're hearing everything that I'm hearing and the low voices. So it really has to do with the individual and your sensory input and how it's working.
Mm-hmm. So true. Very true.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. I've got a couple of questions. So this is this is your mate, isn't it, Nicole, from Jenny?
Mm-hmm. She's everybody's.
We were with her last night.
Oh yeah. Do you know? I don't even know. I said that. I was looking at the pictures about 10 minutes before we went live.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, everyone's friend.
Tony, may I please answer this question?
Sure.
You can follow up with it, but I think we all know the answer. The most common phrase we hear, he's laughing, and they both know, the spirit world says nothing more frequently with more feeling than they say the name Rathman. We get it all the time. He gets it all the time. They've said Yakovetti, and that's hard for the living. But Rathman comes through a lot. And it's pretty awesome because it's undeniable every time I've heard it, on his or on ours.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It does come through a lot, and very, very funny response. But Jenny, the fact of the matter is, if somebody asked you that question about your communication with normal human individuals today, what's your common themes? What do they talk about? It's no different. It can range from all over the boards. I mean, there isn't a one theme or a one push. And people always say, well, did they give you information about what the future is going to hold or what your next step will be? No, they don't. Why? Because again, it pushes those boundaries of what we're supposed to know and what we're not allowed to know. So the conversations are really no different than conversations you have with someone standing in front of you. And what questions you choose to ask will determine whether they're actually going to answer them or not. Free will is involved in humans. It is also involved in consciousness, spirits, whatever you want to call it. It is their choice to answer or not, and we can't force them to.
Yeah, no, I agree. And free will, in the way that we interpret it, a lot of times is somewhat of a red herring. We interpret that as us choosing to do something and not having someone else tell us what to do. But our choices are determined by our needs, and our needs are determined by our choices. Right. So free will is not necessarily a choice that's coming from somebody else. It's just, it has to be in league with who we identify as, right? Like to abuse something or somebody is not something Tony would identify with. So his act of free will would be choosing not to be that, or to act that way. But that's not because if somebody's imposing a choice on him and he gets to make it. Like every choice we make this in league with us. If we could just choose what we want to identify with, that's not who we are, then somebody sitting in a prison cell somewhere would just go, this is the best place on earth, and then they would be instantly happy.
Right.
can't do that. We have to identify with who we are, and to the idea of free will is us feeling like what we choose or what we do matches who we identify or think that we are.
Yeah. And I noticed OGG just asked, have they ever given you a warning? The best one I can think about is Ron and Lourdes, your damnation clip. And I don't know if that's ever been played. I don't know if that's ever been heard, but maybe you could just explain what occurred in that clip.
So we don't really get negative messages at all.
Yeah.
But we have this one that's called damnation, and people probably watch it because they think, ooh, you know. But basically, the damnation one is pretty much a warning about the way we live and the way that we view the paranormal. That's pretty much, so it's actually a warning. It's not, you know, anything demonic or anything like that.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, it's really a warning that there is a dark side, and we make fun of it, or not we as in the four of us, but paranormally, that people think it's a joke. And it literally said it exists. And then it said, if you don't take it seriously, you will crash and burn.
Yeah.
So it's an upfront message saying, you know, it may not be a common occurrence like Hollywood loves to perceive it, that where every week you get possessed. No, it doesn't occur like that. But it is warning everyone that it does exist.
It's out there.
Yeah, and that's what we took it as. And that's one of the ones that also for us, like I've never seen a ghost box do. It was 1 minute and 8 seconds of one voice talking on a rant with a cohesive thought. The whole message was that same thought. And that's what we thought. Tony said it spot on. We thought it was a cautionary message just saying you guys celebritize or don't take seriously this whole demonic thing. If you think it's cool, no.
Yeah.
And then at the end, it say, you'll crash and burn. We're like, whoa.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to hear when you guys get the same voices coming through, like consistently. Like when we were at the Waka River School, and that one voice just kept coming through, like Charlotte. Like no matter what we were asking, it was just trying to get the point across.
Yeah.
You guys know that a lot.
Tony, what was the name of the guy? There was a period of time, this is 1.0, that every time you turned it on, this guy's
Colby, I think. Cody.
Kyle.
That was it. Every time he turned it on, I'll let him tell that story because it's awesome. We had one that we shared with them where for a couple of weeks before we went down to the Montgomery house in North Carolina, where all 6 of us from EVP, Tony, Cherie, too, and Chris and Audra, we kept getting at the Shanley, at home, wherever, we kept getting James. We said, who? Patterson. Kept coming up. We go to the Montgomery house. We drop our equipment. We're going to go eat and come back. We just drop our equipment at the location. We're doing a walkthrough. And we had asked Chris and Audra this because they work with the Historical Society. That name mean anything? Is there any? No, I can't think of anything. You get to the second floor. Audra looks on the wall in one of the, we used to be a bedroom, I guess, in the house's original incarnation, right? And she points at the wall and she's like,
she couldn't even speak.
And there's a military guy who was a naval pilot who died in a commercial plane crash after the war, whose name was James Patterson, and it's right on the wall.
That's crazy.
We turned on Staticom, and I'll let Tony not only tell his story about Kyle, but I'll also let him start out by making fun of me, because when we got to the Montgomery house that night after that wow moment of the wall, I turned on Staticom, and it was literally a few seconds into it, and I heard James Patterson. And then, Tony, do tell them what I did.
All you can hear is Ron going, no way. You can hear him walking. Come, I'm done. No way. And he's coming down the steps. It's all on recording. I don't remember whose recorder caught it. Chris's. Yours? Chris, probably too. He was freaking out. This is not happening. No. It's hilarious.
It's so
but
funny.
it happened.
I
And
think we were live. I was doing live.
we might have been. I don't
Facebook
remember.
Live.
I always forget about who was recording, how we remember capturing it, or who captured it. But it's there,
It's hilarious.
It's hilarious because Ron and Lourdes were hearing this name prior to even coming to North Carolina. They were pre-connecting before they even showed up. They're the ones who brought it to our attention. Chris and Audra, having been involved with the house and the society? Said, no, we don't know that name. And when Audra saw that, she's like, oh, yeah. It was great. And then the voice comes through right away when he turned it on, trying to reconnect again.
Wow.
Tell him about Kyle.
And tell him about the Kyle thing. That was
right. So this was Staticom 1.0, but I was having some real difficulty with the communication. In fact, this was the story I was telling before. I just didn't mention that his name was Kyle.
Yeah.
But he kept trying to come through. And when I'd say, Kyle, are you there? Boom. You could hear him answer, but the machine would shut down. Everything would go blank, and I'd have to not restart the whole computer, but reset the methodology that produced the voice to get his voice to come back. And that happened over and over. And it happened for about 5 days. Every time I'd ask, he was there. Well, he was giving information, but we couldn't clear it. And then finally, I don't remember what we did, but we could start hearing what he was saying. And he kept saying, power amulet. And I'm thinking, I've never heard, I know most electronic circuits and stuff. I've never heard of that. I'm thinking, does the computer not have enough power? He's trying to increase clarity. Well, it turned out it had nothing to do with electronics at all. It was literally description of a power amulet necklace with a quartz crystal encircled by, what was that metal? Hematite.
Yeah.
So we made one, and I put it on, and I don't have it on right now only because it just broke. Otherwise, I always have it on. But when we put it back, we could hear him. The spikes had alleviated, and we heard his message, what he was trying to convey. So it was.
Oh, and also the battery, the remote.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So we have remotes, every TV, everything.
Of course.
So Cherie wanted to watch TV, and the batteries died. We didn't have any replacement AA in the house, but she wanted to watch TV so bad. Now, granted, you can go to the actual set and adjust.
Yeah, it's completely dead.
But the remote did not work.
Yeah.
So joking around, I said, "Here, let me have it."
You rub it on me.
I put the necklace to it. The batteries lasted for another, how many weeks? 2 or 3.
Yeah, something like.
And I'm like, no way.
So he was rubbing the remote control in his.
We were doing it in Vegas when we were there. And I'm like,
I'm surprised it's still working without changing the battery.
The batteries ran for 2 or 3 weeks after, which, can I explain that? No, I can't. Do I know for a fact that's what occurred? No, I don't. But it was the experience and what we thought occurred.
You got to start marketing those to investigators. Our batteries die all the time.
Yeah, seriously.
Get a power amulet.
My K2 died. Go rub it on Rathman.
Have a Rathman near you.
Oh, that crystal, he did it himself with the lapidary.
Yeah, I carved the crystal myself. We went out, we bought it. I used the lapidary machine to put it into a pyramid. When we were out going to look for the materials, and this has never occurred to me before, but I got a mental image, and it literally showed the quartz in a pyramid shape, surrounded by a hematite circle. And we went into this shop, and they were both laying right in front of me. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, that's it. And then Cherie built it, constructed it, put it all together, put it on a necklace, and
I don't think you told us that you had a mental image of it. That's very interesting. That's powerful. You got
that never happens to me. We were driving. I said, Cherie, I just saw it. And then we walked into the shop, and literally it was almost pre-made for us. It was a hematite ring, which the crystal fit in perfectly, and then she wired it and done. Oh, she's going to grab it, I'm sure.
That's pretty cool.
Getting it.
Good. It came out really nice.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
It looked really good. There's your universal phenomenal consciousness impinging upon your
perfect example
boundary, right, on your dashboard of perception, and it gave you the imagery for which you needed to build the thing.
Yep.
Oh, wow. So that's it.
That's cool. I like that.
Can you put a ticker on the bottom like Home Shopping Channel and we start selling them?
I'm
Oh,
sure
available on
somebody can.
ntvoices.com.
Sure, as long as Cherie's willing to, I'll make the pyramid out of the quartz, but she'll have to construct them all because I can't do that.
It came out nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did.
That's
It's
my
nice.
hobby.
Right. So got a couple from Joe. So the more statements and questions, but I'll go through them anyway. And he's put, my favourite response is the asshole experiment. We got the same answer in 8 different locations, even giving the full name of the so-called asshole.
Yeah, that's his own personal little experiment. Go ahead.
I think it's interesting. It was great. Yes, we mentioned the person who's not such a nice person, but talking about the energies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yes, that did happen, and it was amazing. And then the 8 times in different locations.
Yes.
But this specific time in Gettysburg, we asked for the person, and we got asshole, and then the voices, the way they came, they changed. They sounded angrier. They sounded, like a totally different vibe that we actually stopped it, went outside, took a little break, 10, 15-minute break, and then came back in. And then everything seemed more, light, but that totally happened. It was a great experiment, actually.
Yeah, he had asked that question about this person that he's not fond of in a few different places, and he was dying to do it in Gettysburg. And when it was going so well, we went, all right, fine, go ahead, have your fun. And he asks, and it names the person.
He gets it
completely clear.
First and last name.
Yep. First and last name, correct. Yep. There was another individual that you asked about as well. I'm not going to name, but not from this country, that gave a very negative response to
Yeah, that was it. Was the I hate speaking to him one?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's
interesting. The relationships that you guys build and other people who are doing ITC build with the other side can be positive, like you guys have, or apparently negative.
Yeah.
And again, to bring it back to our reality here, it's the same thing, right? If you negative attracts negative and positive attracts positive. And that's why usually you see the group of troublemakers, they all seem to find each other. They do. And then all the that's how it works.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
The other one from Joe is for Ron, and he says, Ron, tell them about White Castle.
Oh, that's a nice story.
Oh, yeah. So that wasn't on Staticom or on Direct Radio Voice because we were in Penhurst, I think. That was on a ghost box.
No, we got it on Staticom.
Did we?
Yeah, we've gotten White Castle. We've gotten Superman.
I thought that was one he was referring to, was the one at Penhurst, though, because that was him and Anthony Simonelli's former teammate who passed away, Joe McCaffrey. That was their code word if he ever passed on that he would say through whatever device.
White Castle.
Okay.
Which is the name of a very low end but quite tasty small hamburger joint here in the United States, right?
Very good.
And so that was their code word, and it did come through that one time on a ghost box there. And I guess I don't remember when, but I guess it did come through also on.
I think it came through in Gettysburg. I'm not sure, but we've had it come through. It may not have been Staticom, maybe Direct Radio Voice. I'm not sure, but it came through.
And those kind of things are interesting too, because with the whole hearing what you want to hear thing, we've had instances like that when the only person, like Steve and Pam Barry in Gettysburg, what did my mom take me to do as a kid all the time? Nobody knew the activity answer. Nobody, except for him.
Yeah.
That he was looking for, and then the voice goes fishing, and he flipped out because that was the answer.
And we all heard it.
So we all heard the word, and we all didn't have anything we wanted to hear.
We were like, fishing? Yup, that's exactly like you heard it. It's crazy how that happens. It's wonderful how that happens.
It's just
that's great.
Providing those moments for people who get some kind of profound emotional connection or experience from that. That's the coolest part. We're not charging them to have the experience. If they have it, we don't lead anybody. We don't even have information to do that. It just whatever comes through.
Yeah,
You know?
what you see is what you hear is what you get.
We don't give out cold readings to get info from you. Staticom just does it.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you. Do you want to do the next question, Nicole?
Yeah.
I'll pop it up.
So this is from Lara. How often do you get communications in other languages?
Usually when we ask, or the question is asked in another language. The crazy thing about it is they seem to be able to speak almost, and I don't know this for a fact, but we've seen it through experience where they can change languages at will. And they will communicate in the language that they know you understand. If somebody asks in another language, the response will come through in that language. So their ability far outweighs anything we have, but the language to be different has to be either requested through asking through it or a request for them to speak it. But normally when we turn it on, it's English for us, just because that's the language we communicate in.
Yeah, I think with us, and I agree with everything Tony just said.
Yeah.
But if they know someone is in the room that speaks that language, it tends to, like, we've had German come through, and we don't in an investigation. Someone in the audience speaks German, and then they'll start talking. So if they know someone in the room may speak a different language, they'll try to come through, and perhaps because they want to connect to that person.
And that's historically what EVP and ITC research, going back into the early days in Europe, that was the way. You could be in a country that didn't have English speaking broadcast at all, but if that was the language and you were using, let's say, direct radio voice, that would be the language you would get.
Also, it's sort of Staticom's version of a message only showing up on one voice recorder. Physically, from a sound wave perspective, that's not possible. Every recorder would pick it up, but we know it does happen, which means they're literally leaving that message specifically for whoever recorder that is. When they pulled out and spoke German to the one person in Ron and Lourdes' audience, that's the only person who's probably going to hear it, understand it, and that to us is their way of directing that message to the person who would have understood.
That's right.
I agree.
Excellent. Thank you. We're coming up to 2 hours. There are no more questions. I think everyone's just heads blown. I think that's what it is. Have you guys got anything you want to add? Anything you've not spoke about?
We covered a lot.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did. We both, like I said, Ron and Lourdes give demonstrations on the East Coast. Cherie and I do demonstrations on the West Coast. If this is something you've just learned about, want to know more about, check out the websites, check out the Facebook pages. There are examples from all 14 members about what Staticom can do. Everything that we talked about, the responses given, the clarity to it. Ron and Lourdes do the digital seance initiatives on the East Coast. We do them on the West Coast. If you ever see that advertised and you're in the area, go check it out. Paracons, Ron and Lourdes are involved on many on the East Coast. Cherie and I are involved on ones on the West Coast. I know Ron and Lourdes have some coming up. We have some coming up in Globe here in Arizona, in Tombstone in Arizona. Staticom will be demonstrated. There'll be lectures on it. There'll be workshops. So if your interest has been piqued, check out both the East and West, depending on what side you're on, and see if there's something you can go attend and experience it firsthand.
Yep, our main Paracons on this side, the main ones, and I'm sorry if I forgot any, but it's Gettysburg, it's the Hanover Tavern Paracon, right. It's the Penhurst Paracon, and New Jersey Paranormal Expo, Paraunity.
Right.
Those are the main four that we usually do.
Yeah.
Everybody out. I'm sorry, honey?
Will you guys be at Mass Paracon?
Well, Mass Paracon, see, thank you. And Mass Paracon.
Yes, Hanover Tavern already happened in January.
Yeah, but it'll happen again.
Right, it'll happen next year. We're doing a trifecta event with Get Haunted at the Shanley Hotel with Ronnie LeBlanc from Expedition Bigfoot. They're going to have UFO stuff, Squatch stuff, paranormal stuff. And then one for many of your viewers would be interested in is that in September, I think it's the 19th to the 22nd at Bosworth Hall, Festival of the Unexplained. Lourdes and I will be out there, so we'll be not only speaking and lecturing on analytic idealism and ITC with Staticom, but we'll also be demonstrating. We're part of investigations at the festival, so that's in September by the end of the year, and then Mass Paracon, as mentioned, also. We're grateful because between both coasts, some of the ones we've named we're doing, New Jersey Para Unity and Mass Paracon and the festival in the UK. Tony and Cherie doing a Globe and Tombstone are two of the biggest ones on the West Coast. So we're all very fortunate to get the exposure that we're getting and getting the invites that we're getting to go to these places and speak on it.
Yeah.
You might want to mention too, it's not available yet, but maybe just drop a future reference to the museum.
Yes, actually, well, part of it's going to be, yes, I'm glad you brought that up. The UFO and Paranormal Museum in Pine Bush, New York is adding into its displays with regards to paranormal stuff a couple of things that come from us. There's going to be a Staticom exhibit in the EVP audio phenomenon area. So we're producing a short video, it will be part of the guided and self-guided tours that people do, explaining Staticom, showing them what it is, and each of us will kind of just give a little brief testimony, a couple of clips, examples, a few minutes, maybe 3 minutes or so of video explaining it. Also, well, two things. Uncle Giuseppe Caradonna, who's watching, he has a really cool stick figure ducking out of the way of my arm from an investigation from an SLS camera. He told me to move my arm, and the stick figure goes like this to avoid the arm, which something false positive mapped in would either be eclipsed by or would eclipse the arm. It wouldn't move out of the way, but whatever this was, literally ducked out of the way. That's going to be an added part of the tour at the Pine Bush Museum, UFO and Paranormal Museum. And for us here, and I'll let the Rathmans speak to their own
Never seen anything like it.
The most insane video footage of shadow figures walking in the middle of a hallway from the Rathmans when they used to run the Phelps Dodge Hospital in Ajo, Arizona. At least two.
Wow.
Is going to be on the tour, guided and self-guided, at the UFO Paranormal Museum in Pine Bush. The footage, and Tony already sent me the video. I already sent it to Lance, who's the director of the museum, and he called me up. I think we're past bad words on this show by now. He called me and he goes, "Holy shit, dude! Holy shit! Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? What is really?
He freaked out.
Wow!
It's amazing footage. Tony can speak to the.
I don't really need to say much more. It's shadow figures we caught on a DVD camera where we were actually asleep.
DVR.
Yeah. We had a FLIR camera set up as well, but nothing showed up on the FLIR. But yet you can see it plain as day. It's three-dimensional. It walks into the middle of the darkest part of the hall, turns around, walks back, goes back into the room. But it's a mind-blowing clip, and
they can see it also on YouTube.
Yeah, it's on our Entity Voices Paranormal Investigations YouTube channel. So
it will be part of it'll be regular part of the tour, and the docuseries that we mentioned before. Knowingly Talking to the Unknown, which Tony was kind enough to name after the slug line of my first book, Paranormally Speaking, Knowingly Talking to the Unknown. Yep. And that's a 3-part direct radio voice and how it evolved into Staticom, and we kind of break down how it works. That's available on Paraflix, which is a streaming service, which is very affordable, has a lot of content on it, so do check it out there if you can too. We're proud of the work we put into it. Tony busted his butt editing that. I did some of the edit for some of the segments, but he put this thing together.
He worked really hard on it, and it came out wonderful.
Yeah,
it really did.
Yeah,
we thank.
It's great. Everybody should go check that out.
Yeah, definitely. Right. Well, we have.
Are they still running the Staticom discount for Paraflix?
Yes, I think it's like $40 US dollars for the year. If you mention Staticom 25, they take 20% off of that. You could honestly join it for a month if you wanted to preview it. I think it's like $4 for the month.
A little less than $4.
Yeah,
yeah, $4.
$3.99. And if you act now, you get your autographed Tony Rathman T-shirt and a power amulet. Oh, too soon. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's worth it. It was good. We were really happy to be able to chronicle, what it is we had done from the beginning of Direct Radio Voice forward. And it's nice that we have people that we're working with who share our vision and are innovative with ITC. And honestly, if I would recommend the Rathmans teach anything to the community when they're out there talking about all this stuff, is to teach people how to be compassionate and care about something more than yourself, because they do it at a level that we've not seen in most other people, and we appreciate it.
And we also want to thank you guys, people like you that support what we do and love what we do and watch us. We do appreciate all the support that you guys give us.
One of the greatest toxins in the paranormal community these days is entitlement. And it causes all kinds of attacking and I'm due this and why does he have that? And we don't feel that the field or anybody owes us anything. Any opportunity we get on shows like this, however big or small an audience, any coverage, any attention we get, we appreciate. Nobody owes it to us, but it's kind when we get it.
Right.
Yeah,
So
I agree completely.
I love having you guys on. So whenever you want to come on, not a problem.
Yeah, and everybody go support these people. Go follow them, like their
definitely.
pages, because they are some of the most wonderful, genuine, compassionate, humble people in the field. And Ron and Lourdes and Tony and Cherie, anybody is very lucky to work with them.
As the same for you guys.
Yeah, no, we appreciate y'all. And if you learned anything from the beginning of the show, when Tony talked about how we first got on their show, is once you bring us on, it's really hard to get rid of us.
You're stuck with us.
Yeah. We're like mold. Mold.
And on that note, I am going to have to end it now. Yeah, but no, massive thank you for everyone coming on. It's just been mind-blowing. It's all I've got. It really has.
Thank you guys, both, your audience too.
Yep.
Now everybody go back and immediately watch it again so you can really understand.
Just keep watching it over and over.
Yep.
You'll be fine. But
And then head over to Entity Voices and watch the shadow.
Yeah. Right. So that's everything we've got for tonight. We are back on Wednesday when we are going to be joined by forgot his name. It is Dave Hodrian, who does UFOs and that over in the UK. So
very cool.
Nice.
That's it. Have a great rest of your Sunday and enjoy Monday morning work.
Thank you.
And that's everything I've got. So take care, everyone, and goodbye. Thanks again.